Joe first contacted me, I believe it was New Year's Day, and I was like, why is Joe contacting me? Because I knew there'd been a DP assigned to the project, and so I was like, oh, it's nice to hear from you, what's up? And he's like, would you be interested in flying out to Virginia Beach in 3 months and shooting a massive senior project? I said yes right away because I was, it's Joe. And the first big project I ever did with him was at Regent. And it was probably the biggest thing I'd ever done in my life at the time, and I was thrilled that I was chosen to do it. It was pretty stressful working out the details of this while 600 miles away from the director and my crew and everything that was happening while up in Ohio.
We're here in Virginia Beach, so there was the difficulty of that long distance.
So we were basically meeting over Skype every few days, especially once we got closer. We were meeting almost every day over Skype and basically trying to talk out what was going to happen and what Joe's vision was.
He really looks to his directors to provide a shot list and a creative vision that's fairly developed. So that was intimidating for me and challenging because I was in the story. I was with the actors. I'm really more of an actor's director. But in the end, I'm glad that it happened that way because I do like to micromanage in things that matter like that. And so I was able to carve out my own aesthetic and kind of completely infuse the aesthetic of the film with it.
We decided in advance that we didn't want to be talking much when we got on set, and not because we don't like each other, but because we were hoping that by the time we got to set, we would both know our respective roles so well that we could focus entirely on them and not actually really talk to each other much, except for at the end of each shot to say, did you like it? I liked it. Okay, you ready? Good? I'm good, so let's move on. We mainly decided we wanted to shoot red because it has 18 stops of dynamic range when you turn on a feature called HDRX, which is almost human eye quality in terms of how much light and dark you can have in the same shot without it either going to black or exploding into whiteness. But the other thing was we wanted a camera that could ramp frame rates to higher frame rates so we could do better slow motion and you know, get some better stylized and dramatic moments in the film while not compromising aspect ratio and all that.
Well, this is the Red Epic. Very expensive camera. We rented from Richmond, from a place called Gearhead Rental. They were nice enough to throw in some freebies with it as well, and they've just been very accommodating throughout the whole process. We also have the Cook S4s. It's a prime kit. The likes of Roger Deacon shoot on these lenses. Very, very nice. Also, we have some of the school's equipment, Sackler V18 fluid head, follow focus map box, filter kit. We have a whole slew of camera stuff to use, and it's all very fun. I believe part of the reason we got this camera was because it's got such enormous processing power in it. So part of the reason we got it was because it can actually record 2 streams at once, one underexposed and one normally exposed. It's a feature called HDRX, and it'll actually give you extra stops at dynamic range. It can record in 120 FPS at 2K. It can record in normal frame rates at 5K. So you get a lot of resolution. You can just process enormous amounts of data at once, and it makes a really pretty picture. Yeah, we've flown it on Steadicam quite a bit. The bulk of the X Club scene was shot on the Steadicam. Thankfully, this isn't as heavy as the original Red, which is called the Red 1. Today's almost all Steadicam. Right now we have it on a hi-hat, but then once we're done with this shot, we're going to be taking it off. I'm going to be balancing on the Steadicam. And we're doing some slow motion stuff today. Now we're shooting one here at, I think, 96 FPS, so that'll look pretty cool. It's the chalk, real slow, going across. A lot of it will be Steadicam. There's a couple of complicated moves. First shot in the film actually is coming around here and running up to the building, weaving in and out some stuff, and ending on a single of our main characters. So we should have some interesting stuff to do today.
Today was a little rough. It was probably the most difficult day for me shooting today because we had to make a fully daylit, normal day into sunset-looking cinematography, which is not exactly easy unless you're going to take a giant blimp and cover up the sun hitting the whole scene, which we didn't have, so we had to do a lot of moving around with silks and stuff and tried to overpower the natural daylight we were getting with 2 5Ks and 2 HMIs down the street, and it worked for the most part. The last weekend was the best. We shot the interior of Jack's clinic, the interior of the other doctor's flashback to his operation, Jack's final operation, the climax of the film was shot, so it was definitely the most interesting and constantly shifting part to shoot because we jumped all around in the story and got to shoot all the best parts.
My favorite shot from this past weekend was probably a shot of Jack in his study. And he was kind of showing us the angst he was feeling at failing his friend and seeing him kind of die. So he actually improv'd a really violent bit of emotion that was wonderful. And it looked so pretty because it was lit by his desk lamp and the golden amber magic hour light coming through the window. So it was kind of a minimalistic lighting setup, and it worked so well. I'm in love.
I think the biggest thing that changed for both of us in approaching this project is that we had a lot more experience on which to go from. We learned from a lot of mistakes we'd made on mostly what not to do. Not as much what to do, but what not to do.
Well, I had worked with Matt before, which was a big deal because starting anything fresh in a project of this scale is daunting. So we kind of had a sense of each other's workflow and creative process going into the production, which was crucial.
Joe and I have relatively different respective palettes, I believe, in terms of cinema. Joe is a very refined, golden era of Hollywood, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington type of a guy. I prefer, in general, a more stylized, aggressive, fast-paced action effects type of cinematography. So I knew going into this that there was going to be some difference of opinion. However, since I appreciate the more refined styles of shooting that Joe likes, and I knew that's what he would like, we were mostly on the same page to begin with because I guessed relatively what he was going to ask and what he was going to want. And I'm happy that I got the opportunity to shoot it because I typically don't shoot films like this.
Matt is a joy to work with. He's a very reasonable person, let alone reasonable DP. So he's very caring, very personal, and very, very easy to communicate with. Very flexible, very open-minded in regards to changing a shot at the last minute, that sort of thing. It's a healthy balance between our two styles and aesthetics. And I love working with Matt. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. He's a terrific artist and a good friend.